Hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets, and today we're going to be highlighting the Batman events of the 90s and early 2000s. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent, and today we're going to be talking about the Batman events of the 90s and 2000s, as I think they were phenomenal events and a whole lot of fun to read, so we're going to highlight a couple of them here. If I missed your favorite one, let me know down below in the comments, and we will talk about it down there. So, before we get into the video, let me ask you to first please subscribe. Helps me out, helps the channel grow, lets you know when I drop new videos, all that good stuff. So, let's jump right in. So, the 90s, early 2000s were some of, I think, the best Batman comics ever produced, ever written, all that stuff. It kicked off with the classic Nightfall, right? So this is where Bane, this guy right here, comes in, breaks Batman's back, and, slowly, as there are now like 9 different trades that collect this entire span of Batman comics across everything. Like, everything is in here. There's also 3 omnibuses that collect this same stuff. I have the trades because I love the way that the spines are. Like, if you line up the spine for each section of the event, it creates a new bat symbol, which was on the cover. Like, the Nightfall symbol looked like that, and was an eclipse going over the bat symbol. As you got further and further into the books, I've got a video on the channel showing you all this crazy shit. Night's End has its own thing. Night Quest has its own bat symbol. Love all that iconography they introduced in the books. But this is about this character of Bane who shows up and defeats Batman and takes him out. So there's 3 volumes of this Nightfall run. There's a prelude and then part 1, part 2. Part 1 leads up to the breaking of the bat, which happens right here in Batman 497. And beautiful writing by Chuck Dixon. You got Doug Munch, Alan Grant. Artists, you have who is in here? Kelly Jones doing cover work. You got Graham Nolan, Jim Aparo, Norm Brayfogle, Jim Bayland doing some beautiful stuff. Again, early 90s, pre-computer coloring, so really simplified, really easy to follow art, but still beautiful, gorgeous stuff nonetheless. I will say, out of all these, Norm Brayfogle and who's the other guy? Graham Nolan are my favorite. Jim Aparo, not really. I just kind of feel like all his faces kind of feel like too long, like they're stretched too long. But he definitely can pretty much draw everything, and he drew for a long time. Like, he's all over the Bat books. He's probably in every event book I'm about to highlight you in some way or fashion, because he drew for a long time. So after Nightfall, you had the Knight's Quest event, so to speak. It's kind of all the same thing. It's just a continuation of the story. So this is, we call him As-Bats, if you're familiar with him, but it's really, his name is Jean-Paul Valley. He was the second Batman. He's the guy who Bruce said, actually, no, not Nightwing, not Robin, you should give this new guy, Azrael, the Bat costume. And he kind of slowly goes nuts over the course of the Nightfall books, or Night Quest. So as he goes nuts, Bruce realizes that he has to take back the mantle of the Bat. So he does so here in the third part of this like trifecta of massive Batman events. Night's End, and this is where you see the Bat, the new Bat signal kind of shattering as the events go on to fall away, and then the real Bat symbol take place. But I love this story. It's all the Batman characters. You got Robin, you got Nightwing. They're going up against Jean-Paul Valley, who's gone insane and doesn't want to give up the mantle of the Batman. He gets this crazy costume with the blades cape. Somehow it turns red when it gets lit on fire and never goes back to blue. Just wonderful stuff. I got reviews of all these books on the channel, so if you want to see my thoughts on each individual volume, they are in the Nightfall playlist. But it's a wonderful event. So this is like the beginning. There's some other stuff after this. You have Prodigal, where Bruce comes in, takes back the mantle from As-Bats, and then goes, you know what? Actually, in the very next issue, Dick, can you be Batman for a while? Because I've got some stuff to do. And then he disappears, and then he comes back, and there's a third volume called Troika, which isn't really necessary at all. But they collected it anyway for the first time in a trade paperback, just I think so they could make 9 volumes of this massive spine thing or something. Who knows? Maybe they planned the omnibuses out first and then realized they needed something more substantial to make that third omnibus thicker, so that they could charge the same price and assume they were going to sell the same number of copies. Who knows? I don't know. So the next event in the 90s, I believe, was this one, Contagion, right? So this one is pretty crazy. This kind of leads into all the stuff with No Man's Land, Cataclysm, the earthquake, all that stuff. It kind of all starts here with an outbreak here. There's a novel virus that breaks out here. Oh, hey, look, it turned into an Azrael page. I love Azrael. And there's another one. Look at that. Just luck of Azrael. But anyway, it's got Nightwing, like the whole Bat family. The nice thing about all these Bat events is they all take place in Gotham City, so there's no Green Lantern, there's no Superman. It's just Batman, his allies, battling whatever situations going on. And the fun part about all these different events is that they all find a way to put Batman and his allies in a new situation that you haven't seen before. So against a new enemy that they couldn't punch in the face, so they have to solve something. So there's a lot of detective work in some of these things coming up here. Nightfall is more of a like a personal conquest thing. It's a lot of punching villains in the face, kind of the opposite of what I just said. But starting with Contagion, everything is a new situation that Batman can't really punch in the face. So here's a virus, it kills people really fast, and they have to find a cure. So they're racing around the earth to find a cure to this virus. It's called the Clench, I believe. And you've got issues of Robin, Catwoman in here, Azrael, Nightwing, the whole family. Just everybody is taking part in the hunt for this cure here. This is an older copy. I think there's a newer trade dress for this. This is like from the mid-2000s when they were doing this stuff on the bat spines. And technically, this bat spine thing isn't really for anything except after No Man's Land. So why they got put on there, I don't know. But that's neither here nor there. I think this is it's an okay story. It's fine, but to read No Man's Land, because they talk a little bit about the clench and the virus and stuff, you kind of need to read Contagion. It's not the best, but hey, it's fun. One thing I do think you can skip. So this is the one that's not on the list. Is Batman Legacy. There's 2 volumes of it. I don't have them. I have them digitally. And I read them for the first time like last year, and I totally think they're skippable in terms of 90s Batman events. For whatever reason, there's 2 volumes. The story doesn't start until the second volume, so the first one is all set up. And then even in the second volume, a lot of that is more stuff with Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul is cool, and this Legacy has Bane in it, but again, I don't think it's the best Bane story or the best Ra's al Ghul story. And basically all it does is say, has more to do with where the clench came from. I'll just put it at that. So not really, I didn't really like it. Like, I would rather reread Contagion than read 2 more volumes of Legacy. So once you have Contagion, you have the mammoth Batman story that I'm rereading right now, which is the Cataclysm, Road to No Man's Land, and then No Man's Land. So I just am finished reading part 2 of No Man's Land, so I guess it's really like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 3 parts and then 4 parts of 7. Yeah. So I finished reading part 5 of this whole 7-part mammoth Batman event. So there's an earthquake in the Cataclysm trade. I'm holding the No Man's Land Volume 3 right here. There's an earthquake that rocks Gotham City, like to the core. Like every building basically falls unless it was built by Wayne Enterprises, because Wayne Enterprises, for reasons, earthquake proofed all the buildings that they built. So that's really the only things that are left standing. And again, that Cataclysm trade, Road to No Man's Land Volume 1 are awesome, which contains the Aftershock issues. Volume 1 of Road to No Man's Land is awesome because it puts Batman he's just in save people mode, or survival mode. It's not punch villains in the face mode like he normally is. So the new situation is Batman there's nothing to cling on to. Everything is crumbling. You can't shoot your grappling hook to the building across the street because it's fallen down. The 6-story building is now one story in a pile of rubble. So it's Batman trying to figure out how to get around to Gotham City, and still, as there's aftershocks, or there's a moment where he's in the Batcave and he's stuck in the Batcave when the earthquake first hits, and he's got to find a way out, and then also get Alfred out, who's been injured in the quake as well. Wayne Manor is in shambles, so the Batcave's virtually useless to Batman this entire time during this Cataclysm No Man's Land event. Then you got the Road to No Man's Land volumes, which are dealing with how the government abandons Gotham City and turns it into No Man's Land, which is collected in this. This is part 3. 4-volume, this is the new trade paperbacks from 2016 or something or so. There's an omnibus coming out of No Man's Land. It's going to have volume 1 and 2 of these in it. And then I'm assuming they're going to do a volume 2 that'll have 3 and 4. There is a Road to No Man's Land omnibus that's out. If you want to read those, you can go check that out. And that contains Cataclysm and both volumes of Road to No Man's Land. So, quite a mouthful. But these trades are so old, they're kind of hard to track down. I told people in the last video that I did reviewing volume 2 to kind of search out your local comic shops all around your area to see if they have them. If they have some old stock, they might have them. Because I overpaid for my Cataclysm trade. I paid $60 on eBay for it when my one of the comic shops in town had it for cover price for $40. So that would be my recommendation before you jump into overpaying for older trades. I don't know if they're ever going to reprint these. Who knows? But certainly, it seems like the omnibus route may be the easiest way to get them right now. Because I think once you total everything up, it's probably about the same in price, especially if you're overpaying for older trades. So this is my favorite Batman story, bar none, outside of the Night Quest stuff with Asbats. So this is my number 2, this No Man's Land stuff. I reread the original trade paperbacks of this. There was 5 of them. I still have them. And I reread them over and over and over again. I would, every summer or winter break, I would reread these Batman stories. I would reread Night Quest, Night's End, Nightfall, the older versions of that, and then I would reread No Man's Land. So I'm really attached to this story, and I just think it's really cool because it's Batman, in No Man's Land, he's abandoning some of his principles. He's out there to make sure that law and order is kept and people aren't dying. So if there's some theft or something or some bartering, that's fine with him. He's striking deals with the Penguin, with Poison Ivy, in order to solidify the territories and keep order in Gotham City, as opposed to the lawlessness that was there immediately following the quake. So that is a whole lot of fun there. The next event after that I love, this one, Bruce Wayne Murderer. Look at this. This is the newer printing of this book. This is a monster trade paperback. This was originally collected in 4 things that I had. Still have the old ones too. It was Murderer, and then Fugitive. Bruce Wayne Fugitive was 3 parts. This one, I've got an overview of this book and the other one on the channel where I compare and contrast what was in the old versions versus the new ones. But basically, you have Bruce Wayne Murderer and Bruce Wayne Fugitive. Really, they're one story. I only pulled one off the shelf, so my shelf didn't fall over. But Bruce Wayne, one of Bruce Wayne's girlfriends, is murdered in the beginning of this book. And you don't really know who does it. And everybody's looking at Bruce going, are you the guy who did it? And he's so fed up with the questioning whether he did it or not. And even the reader, you don't really know if he did it or not. That he kind of abandons the Bruce Wayne persona and goes on trying to live as Batman himself. And that's what the Bruce Wayne Fugitive part is about. Is that Bruce Wayne kind of escapes from jail and everybody's looking for Bruce Wayne. Meanwhile, Batman's still operating in Gotham City. And there's one moment where they're like, are you going to save Bruce Wayne's name? And he's like, no, I don't really care about Bruce Wayne. I've always been Batman in my heart, and Bruce Wayne is just the legal name I was born to. But once my parents died, Batman was born. And that's the badass part about this book. And it's also a fun murder mystery. I think it does kind of fall apart at the end of the Fugitive stuff, honestly. But the murderer part, definitely a solid read. And you've got wonderful writers in here as well. You've got Greg Rucka, Ed Brubaker, Devin Grayson, Kelly Pluckett, and art by Scott McDaniel, Rick Burchett, Trevor McCarthy, Damian Scott, Steve Lieber. Who is the guy? Who did the back cover here? He was on Brubaker's run. He was on Nightwing for a while. Scott McDaniel, there he is. all over this book. Really, really wonderful art in here, and I think a fantastic story to boot. So the last kind of early 2000s, 90s event we can talk about is Batman War Games. This was like 2002, 2004-ish. Or no, let's call it 2004, 2005, because this came out after Batman Hush, and this is like, post-Earthquake, we're way past No Man's Land, we're past Bruce Wayne Murderer, we had Hush introduced. I think this is happening at the same time as maybe Under the Red Hood a little bit. I can't quite recall. I just know I read the ending of War Games, the war crime stuff that's what it was. War Crimes, the end of this event collided with the kind of the middle of the Red Hood stuff. That was a terrible, terrible 4-issue storyline at the end of War Crimes. But all in all, the War Games event I think was a whole lot of fun. These are the newer trades. Originally it was like Prelude and then maybe 3 volumes, but now they're just in 2 kind of massive volumes here. And this has great writing and art here too. Kind of the next wave, you've got Anderson Gabrich, you've got Pete Woods on art. Who else? Devin Grayson, Ramon Box, lots of Pete Woods, AJ Lieberman, Al Bernuevo. It's cool stuff here, that kind of got us to where we got before Infinite Crisis, before the New 52, when Batman had a whole rogues gallery. And in here you've got Prometheus, Deadshot, Penguin, Hush, like a whole bunch of newer kind of characters in here. There's who is the new guy? I want to call him Orphan. Orpheus. This is this guy right here. This new guy with the helmet, he's in here. He's got a badass female sidekick as well. Forget her name. But he's like this new vigilante on the block that Batman's talking to as the War Games are breaking out. In the War Games, what is War Games? It's basically a gang war within Gotham all around the city. So if you thought No Man's Land was bad, let's let everybody back into the city after we've rebuilt it and then have another gang war, which is basically the first, all of No Man's Land is a huge gang war, and without a bunch of citizens, so it's like, alright, fine. But now you have everybody moved back in, the city's been rebuilt, and it's like, all hell breaks loose in Gotham City, and why it broke loose, who orchestrated it, and how it's resolved is, I think, a pretty decent Batman event. So that is the last one. So after War Games, you had Infinite Crisis, and then you had the reshuffling of Batman. You had Grant Morrison do his stuff. You had Paul Dini do his stuff. And then there was kind of no big Batman crossover for a long, long time. The last one really was War Games across all the Bat books for a significant amount of time. I think Ra's al Ghul was a crossover Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul was a crossover amongst the Bat books. That may have been the last one. I know Death of the Family was kind of one. It was more like a bunch of tie-ins, but when I say event, I mean like part 1, part 2, part 3, jumping across every book in the line where you have to pick up all of them in order to follow the story. Whereas, some of the later events were so small, it was maybe like 1 month or 2 months, or there weren't that many books. This is the explosion of Bat books. You've got 3 different books with Batman Detective Comics, Legends of the Dark Knight, Batman Chronicles. You've got Shadow of the Bat in some of these books. You've got, Gotham Knights in some of these other books. Just so many different Bat titles, plus Nightwing, plus Robin, plus maybe an Azrael or Catwoman or whoever else was running around at the time, Batgirl. Every book in the line is participating, and everybody's firing on all cylinders because it gives these characters something unique to go up against instead of trying to come up with a new villain story of the month. I think that's why these events and this time for me really strike a match in my heart for the love of Batman, because it's everybody coming together to find a new enemy for Batman to come up with. That's not really a villain of the week kind of thing or a villain of the month. It's a new a bigger problem. It's bigger than Batman. It shows how Batman strives to be the best of us, and even though he's just human, he can still find a way to solve all these problems using his might and his wit, and his riches, obviously, to do all this stuff. So this really solidified my love of Batman. All these Batman events here, I think they're all pretty phenomenal, maybe except Contagion. Definitely not Legacy, but But everything else I talked about here, worthy of your time to check out. So that's my look at Batman events of the 90s and 2000s. Let me know which is your favorite down below in the comments. Which one is your least favorite, and why should I love Legacy more? Let me know down below. We will see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.